Absolutely. If we move on to Nottingham Forest, Keith, now there were some reports that Premier League clubs expect them to get a points deduction, very likely by most. If that is the case, do you think actually their whole case that has been going on is actually more serious than Everton's, given, of course, as we've discussed previously, Everton, of course, is down really to the stadium?
Well, again, from what I've read in the media, I have no inside knowledge of Forest's breach in this case. It seems to be around player spending. But again, I would say it's such a minor breach in terms of, it's hardly buying players that are destabilising the whole Premier League. I think, it's a couple of players maybe. And I just don't, Forest are supposed to be competing in the Premier League against clubs like City, as we just discussed. So there's got to be some common sense. And that's where these rules are not built on common sense, because when it comes to the practice of implementing them, we're finding clubs like Forest being penalised for a breach like this. I know it's easy for me to say that, and people can argue that, look, if you're £1 over, then it's guilty. I understand that. But common sense should say, look, really, is it that bad a breach? Did it really cause them to win so much? So it's a difficult one, because I can see both sides of the argument. But with Forest, I have sympathy that that they're being called into question, for all they're trying to do is improve their squad, try and safeguard their investment and their place in the Premier League. They're not being egregious with the spending. I know they bought a lot of players, but hey, some of them have worked, some of them haven't. All they're doing is having a very fair shot at trying to stay in the Premier League, and I think that's good for competition, and I think it's been great for the media and the whole story around the Premier League that Forest have given it. And so, I'm not really one that would want to penalise them just now.
No, and if you don't want to penalise them, actually, I guess the question is then, do you think, two questions, do you think they are going to get a points deduction? Actually, if you were in charge, what would you be doing? Would you give them a sanction, a fine? What would be the reasonable charge?
I think you'd be looking at either a fine or some sort of transfer window suspension, I think, are the ways to go with this. And then I'd be looking very quickly to see if we can change these FFP rules and get them moving into a fairer way for everybody concerned.
They're currently 4 points above the drop zone. They beat West Ham on the weekend previously just gone, and they could be turning their form around, but they do have a really difficult run of games. Do you actually think that if they are to receive a significant points deduction, that actually could really, that could be the final blow that relegates them?
Of course, it's possible. It's the mindset, again, as I say, it's the ripples and the effects that go through a squad and with a manager and the fans. It creates a downward spiral of thought if they lose a couple of games and then the penalty kicks in. It's just such a draconian measure, as I said earlier, and it goes way beyond, I think, what it's intended for.
And do you think this case, Everton's, Manchester City's, actually, will these all be a turning point for financial regulations in the world of football, in England specifically?
I think so. I think it really has shown that there has been such an outcry about this. I think most of football recognise that the Everton penalty has been pretty draconian. I keep using the word, but that's what it is. If if we just look at this, we're being given 10 points because of supposedly financial irregularities around interest payments being either counted or not against a new stadium build. Now, if we'd actually got into administration and said, okay, the loans are too much, we'd only have got 9 points. So, would the Premier League rather have us build a new stadium, which is going to be an asset for the Premier League, it's going to be one of the stadiums for the Euros, or should we just go bust and then say, right, we'll take 9 points rather than 10? Logic does not come into it. And that's where I'm still struggling with the way it's all being handled.
What do you think for Forest? We spoke about Everton and the long-term consequences, but if Forest are to go down, of course, as we've kind of mentioned, that Everton have the stadium to look forward to, that really could be the shining light at the end of the tunnel. What would you say to Forest fans that are going through a very similar feeling to Evertonians as well?
Well, hopefully that they get the same sort of feeling that the Evertonians have had and want to really fight hard against this. You've got to regroup your troops and you've got to try and, get everybody together in adversity and fight against it in that way. And you've got to go with a victim mentality and show the rest of the Premier League that you're going to fight for it. That's all you can do, is try and rally everybody around the sort of cause of injustice. And I hope Forest do that.
Do you think they will get a 10-point deduction? If you had to call it early, what are your thoughts?
No, I don't think it'll be 10 points. I don't know the scale of it, but of their actual transgression. But I just don't know. But I would guess it'll be less than that. And I think the Premier League are also going to be very, very wary of the outcry that's happened after the Everton situation. So I think that, there's now some almost precedent, and particularly the Everton appeal result will also create some sort of precedent. So we're still in this whole evolving situation around these cases, and we're almost making case law in a legal sense. And so those will have bearings on those next round of charges as we go forward.
Yeah, and I think you're right. So again, remains to be seen how Forest's case plays out. You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.